If you like Psych with Mike, here's a couple of ways that you could really help us out. You could subscribe to the show on Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok at Psych with Mike. But the two things that would really, really help us out is subscribing to us on YouTube, search Psych with Mike, but also going to Apple Podcasts and leaving us a review and a comment. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.
I'll be yours. I'm here for your
That's
attention.
Valentine's Day.
What are we doing here? Cognitive benefits of playing video games. Let's pull that one up. All right. Got it.
Welcome into the Psych with Mike Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan, and I am here with my co-host, Mr. Brett Newcomb.
How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. You buried the lead, though.
I'm sorry.
You already gave him a preview of the man behind the curtain.
I'm lost.
You disclosed our topic in our
Oh, before you turn the button on? Oh,
yeah,
well,
yeah.
That's not my problem. That's your problem.
No, it's my problem, man.
Yeah,
I can edit that. But I won't now because we made such a big deal about talking about it. That
wait a minute. When you say we, that usually implies more than you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so how are you today?
I'm good.
Yeah. We started, or before the mics went hot, we were having a conversation about this thing called a help-rejecting complainer, which is something that you and I have actually done a lot of work on and done a lot of presentations about. And it is amazing to me how few people in our profession actually are aware that this is something that it has a lot of clinical research behind it, and they don't know. But then once you start to explain it to them, they're all like, "Oh yeah, I know that person. I know that person." And I don't know why that isn't something. I mean, I was exposed to it in graduate school because you were one of my professors, but apparently it's not something that is well talked about or well educated about in graduate school.
Yeah, I don't know.
But would you tell us what a help-rejecting complainer is?
Yeah, it's the most frustrating kind of patient that you can have because they are very, very seductive in their neediness and in their conviction that you are the only one in the whole wide world that can help them. And that's really a seductive message to hear. Somebody really believes that and says that to you. Your little heart beats faster and your head gets bigger and you're like, well, yeah, hey, I do this for a living. I'm a professional.
I'm a professional, you know.
But they don't take the time to evaluate whatever your offer may be. But they immediately know one or two reasons why it's almost the best thing that you can come up with, but it won't work for them for this reason. Come up with another one.
Right.
So then you think about it and you try to come up with another one, and they say, oh, that's really, really good, but just not going to work for me. Come up with another one. So they're pulling the energy out of you and take it away from you, leave you flat, and they take it home because they're full of your energy.
Right.
But nothing changes in their life. So they
never make any changes.
They never make any changes. So it's very frustrating and difficult to deal with that kind of person as a clinician because you can get seduced into these blind spots where you're trying to offer advice and solve problems, which is not your job. And you need to do a better job of saying, well, no, wait a minute.
Whether it is your job or not, what isn't your job is taking responsibility for whether they take it.
The theory behind dealing with it is to recognize that the best clinical way to treat them is to feed into their helplessness. They're probably in a good answer for you. So if it's not going to work, then what's left in your life? If you're not able to do that, then what's left in your life? And you don't give them any false energy, and you don't give them any of yours, false hope, and you don't give them a path to trot down. Here, go down this path. That makes perfect sense. They're not going to go.
But it also falls under the heading of don't work harder than the client.
Yeah.
And that is one of the things that obviously you taught us in graduate school.
Well, one hopes that I did.
But was really, really hard for me as a
because you want to
neophyte.
Be a caretaker.
Yeah.
People in counseling programs.
That's why we get in the program.
I used to always ask at the beginning of the counseling program in the first class that people would come into, I said, why are you here? And so many would say, well, I'm on a mission from God. I want to help people. Well, that's all well and good. Great. But that's not how you do good therapy.
Right.
If you want to be a good therapist. So there are more things that you need to learn.
And it was about midway through the program where and you had been saying this to not just me, but to
Yeah.
all of us, to be careful about being agenda driven in being a therapist.
Right.
And it was about midway through the program when you were talking about this idea of not working harder than the client, where I started to realize and started to be able to identify those people who were agenda driven, because they're gonna push that agenda no matter what.
No matter what. And if you come in to see them for depression, it's because of their agenda. You
Right.
know, oh, because you were abused as a child. And you come in because your marriage is falling apart. Oh, it's because you were abused as a child. You come in because you're going to lose your job. Well, it's because you were abused as a child.
Right.
And that's their agenda.
And
Child
they
abuse.
can't see
which is a
anything.
real thing.
Right.
But it's not all those things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so all of that kind of goes under that heading of don't work harder than the client, but it's really difficult for people who are new as therapists, and really even sometimes people who are seasoned as therapists, to be able to work through that, because as you say, we all get into this because we're caretakers and that we want to help, and we feel bad about accepting monetary compensation for something that we feel like we would be doing just because it's in our nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you got to get over that if you're going to be successful in the business. And you have to get over it
If
to
you're
do
really
good
going to be
therapy.
helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't be worried about whether or not the client is, I mean, not getting anything out of it, but you can't be worried about whether or not the client is taking your advice if you're going to be a good therapist. Because them not taking your advice is as therapeutically valuable as them taking your advice.
I think you have to be careful about giving advice, period. You need to do a better job of listening and giving accurate, honest feedback about what you're hearing, but not problem solving, not giving suggestions. Oh, you need to go to 5 meetings this week. You need to take your husband's name off your bank account. You need to get a divorce lawyer. That's not my job, is to give that kind of advice. I shouldn't be doing that sort of thing. I need to be saying, well, it sounds as if these are the things that you're saying, and this is the way that it makes you feel. So what options do you have left? Well, I don't know. Well, I don't know either. Let's speculate, but could you do this or could you do that? But not saying this is what you need to do.
I know. That's how you're very Rogerian in the way that you deliver that message.
And someday I
I'm
will, if
more
I keep at it, and I'm getting older, and I
Alessian.
may not be here long, but I'm trying to still teach you what you need to know.
Don't be saying that.
There
Don't
you
be
go.
saying- You know that when you make comments like that, that is
little
extremely
anxiety for you.
existentially anxiety-inducing.
What
for
if
me.
I abandon you in your hour of need?
Yeah.
I don't know. What'll happen then?
What will I do?
Yeah, well, you'll have all these videos to go back and watch.
And I will watch them religiously like it were my job.
Yeah.
But what we wanted to talk about today was this concept of video games. And so I'm going to be honest with you. The reason is because there's a game that came out. It's called Squadrons. It's a Star Wars based game. You fly these little starfighters around. And it's really an update of a game that I played when I was much younger called X-Wing. And so I've been playing this game, and I'm like really into it. I'm more into it. You know, I generally play Batman and Star Wars games. That's about it. And I'm really into this game because it
Saying a lot
harkens
about your
back.
fantasy life when you say that.
Yeah, I know. But it harkens back to an earlier time when I was playing this X-Wing game. And so I'm really into it, and I'm probably, my own cognitive dissonance is causing me to need to create a validation for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, the truth is that if I had $1 for every adolescent who came to my office 10 years ago and said, I want to play video games when I grow up, and a parent who just shook their head and was losing their mind about that, I would have a lot of dollars.
Yeah.
And yet nowadays, that's actually a reality.
Profession.
Yes, you can go to college and get a Division I scholarship playing video games. You can make a decent living.
So my son, who's a graduate engineer, has a full-time engineering
Who
job,
is brilliant.
has made 2 trips out to Los Angeles in recent years to the National Gaming Competition Conference
right.
to just watch people play video games.
Right. So he doesn't even participate.
Well, he plays them in his own right, but
No,
he's not
but
at
he
that
goes to this
competitive
as a
level.
spectator.
He goes to watch.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's
Just like you would go to the Super Bowl.
Exactly. But that's my point, is that you don't even, it isn't just the people who are playing the games.
Yeah.
There's an audience for these games. So the biggest stations or the biggest channels on YouTube that make the most money are channels about people playing video games.
Yeah, and they have teams.
Yeah.
And these guys follow these teams like they're athletes and stars, which they are in their domain.
Absolutely, because it's called esport.
Yeah.
And you can get
Spencer's all over that.
Division I college scholarship and go to school paid for, full ride, to play video games.
So I remember when he was a child and this technology began to be established and to grow exponentially. We had parenting concerns about screen time. How much time do you watch TV? How much time do you play video games? How much time do you do whatever on a screen? And we would limit his time and often offer time as a reward for good behavior in other domains to monitor this, to try to keep him from falling off the edge. Because when he was very young, if he was immersed in one of those games and we needed to stop it, it's time to go to the grocery store, it's time to go to your grandmother's for Christmas, it's time to go to bed, whatever, he would have a meltdown. He couldn't disengage. He couldn't break from it. He would be so immersed in it.
He couldn't turn it off.
He couldn't turn it off. And there were studies and concerns about the use of music and visuals together in a pattern that would get them psyched up. I remember years ago, we would watch, blanking on Bert and Ernie. What's
Sesame Street.
Sesame Street. Thank you. I blanked out on it. But I remember they would do this thing about near and far. You know, where Bert would run up close to the camera and say near, and Ernie would be way back, and then Ernie would come up and say near, and then they'd both retreat and say
that's a microphone.
Far, and stuff like that would happen.
Why are you punching my microphone?
You know, because you frustrate me. I want to go play video games. But anyway, they did some studies. Jim Henson and the Muppets did some studies about the use of sound as a complement to things. And then, like the first Space Invaders, the way that kids really learned to get really good at playing Space Invaders was turn the music off. Because the music, as a component to trying to catch all the Space Invaders before they got faster and faster than you, got them all adrenalized, and they'd be distraught. And then they have to learn, you know, how, as a matter of fact, Spencer showed us a movie the other day about the specific addictive processes involved in developing video games and using modern technology as a way to hook you into coming back more and more.
Yeah, they actually know how much reward they have to give you when to be able to make you,
and how to get you back just to the success point where you'll buy the next level of the game.
Right.
But then,
but we also see a lot of research that correlates 1-to-1 the amount of screen time that a child has and their levels of depression. And so there's a lot of what we have always talked about as evidence that says you should limit that screen time.
Yeah.
But then you have a child who's going to go to, you know, Maryville University and be on their e-sport team. So Maryville University is a university local in St. Louis, and be on their e-sport team, and they're going to then be required to play video games 5 to 8 hours a day as a part of their educational program. So we're kind of at this crossroads now.
We have to find a balance point, just like for anything else in life.
But I think that it's also important for us to say to people, there are certain things that video games do that are positive. It's just not negative.
Absolutely, and especially if you have a variety of exposures. I mean, what are called first-person shooter games, there are benefits that come from that visually. The article that you sent was talking about if you have lazy eye, that playing those video games can train your eye to return to 20/20 vision and not be lazy and not drift. Visual acuity, the ability to track color differentiation and very subtle gradations, those kind of things happen in those first-person shooter games. But there are other games that are about strategy and problem solving that represent complex political systems, economic systems, corporate systems, creation of artificial worlds. There's one called
Minecraft,
which is a phenomenal game because they learn real life lessons. You have to have resources in order to spend them. You have to acquire these resources by mining or farming or whatever you have to do to get enough crops that you can then trade to somebody for wood so that you can build a house. And you build a house online on the screen. And they sell modules for if you want to build an airport, if you want to build a train station or what have you, that you can buy and load into your basic Minecraft game. There are books and movies about it, but it really developmentally is justifiable as a good intrinsic use of time for learning and thinking and problem solving, and even emotional regulation if you learn it correctly. So my whole worldview about that stuff has changed. When Spencer was little and it was a new thing, we were panicky about it because he was so drawn to it, and we kept saying, "Oh, this doesn't have anything but negatives. You got other parts of life you got to develop. You got to grow in these other areas. You can't just be a one-trick pony. You can play games, but you got to have other things too." So we made him play things like baseball and tennis and be active socially in a little group of guys. And one year, there's several families that were all on the baseball team. They were over at my house for Super Bowl. And we were all watching, all the parents and all the kids, teenage boys, were in the room watching Super Bowl. And I look around, and the kids are all texting on their phones. And what I found out was they were all texting each other conversations amongst us, but separate from us, that they knew and were following and tracking and observing and commenting. The parents were like watching the football game. They didn't know.
Which is a different use of technology. That isn't about the games, but yeah.
Well, but they were playing games then.
Yeah. So let's go to our first break, and we'll pick this up on the other side. Be right back. Hey, Brett, if you were going to tell somebody to check out something on the internet to help them with their mental health, what would you tell them?
I'd tell them, listen to Psych with Mike.
Why would you tell them that?
Because it's probably one of the most easily listenable experiences you can have that will give you information that's useful for a whole spectrum of concerns that people have.
I agree, and I have actually been told that by at least a dozen people, several of whom were not married to me, and some of them didn't even know me.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. It's when we get that kind of feedback from people, it is so incredibly humbling and overwhelming for me.
It is for both of us.
Yeah. So we really appreciate it, and as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike. Okay, we're back, and so we've started to lay the foundation for how these experiences, specifically video games, can be positive, but I think that what we have to be careful about is to say there are some positive aspects, but what we don't want is for the pendulum to swing back so far the other way that it becomes destructive. That's
always true in life.
Yeah.
No, don't go to the extremes.
I mean, there's still balance. So before, when we thought, video games are only negative, we were trying to balance those out for our children, make decisions for them that they were incapable of making for themselves. Now that the pendulum has started to swing back the other way, and there's some clinical evidence that's saying, hey, maybe these things are actually good, we don't want parents going out and buying their kids video games and having them play 9 hours a day because they've heard that that's good for them.
There are good things in them in terms of skill developments and learning capacities that may not directly follow the storyline of the game. For instance, there are studies that show that you have an ability to track moving objects in a field full of distractions. You have reduced impulsiveness, which was a fascinating one to me to read. Well, because my child always had problems with impulse control.
Not that I don't. Tracking an object on a field of distraction is actually the electronic test for ADHD.
Yeah.
So this actually, what the idea is that this is actually having an impact on the areas of the brain that are specifically associated with ADHD, and that it may actually, it's not going to eliminate ADHD necessarily in a child, but it may actually make their ADHD better. It may allow them to become more attentive.
Yeah. Overcoming dyslexia is another possibility, and there are studies that show there have been gains with people that suffer from that. But the one I like is the improvements in executive function, the ability to engage in multiple tasks simultaneously, increased mental flexibility, reduction of mental decline as you get old, and so nursing homes and things are starting to have video games in nursing homes for them to play. I saw a video on TikTok the other day of a nursing home that had cardboard cutout trees, and then they had nurses set up in the like dining room, and they had nurses prancing around with little deer antlers on their head, like holiday lights.
Are you sure that was TikTok and not an X-rated movie?
Hang on.
Okay.
And then they had these old people in wheelchairs that had rubber palm guns, and they were deer hunting in the dining room of the old folks home.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah.
So, but something like this might be easier to arrange in your nursing home, and
although that's obviously a lot more fun. And if you can set that up, especially during the pandemic when being in a nursing home,
social experience, social interaction.
Oh my God! Can you imagine what it's been like being in a nursing facility this year?
No,
I can't do that. I just can't. Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
My heart just breaks.
Yes.
So, but anyway, that's not the topic. So, so you would say, because just for full disclosure, I play video games. You don't. You have an issue with playing video games.
Yeah.
Not
I
a
get
mean
vertigo.
issue.
I have a visual processing issue.
And so it actually causes you distress,
Yeah.
physical distress to actually.
I get sick.
I remember, and I don't remember what game I was playing, but I asked you one time if you wanted to play a video game. And this was, years and years and years ago. And you actually, do you remember this? You actually tried.
Yeah, I've tried it a number of times with my son. He'll ask me periodically, hey, can you do this one? I think you could do this one. And I'll sit down and try to play, and I can get 2 to 5 minutes, and then I'm sick in my stomach, and I'm dizzy.
You did. And so you tried, and you did, and it was obvious that you were in distress. And that's when you told me, I have this thing. I don't like playing video games. And I, like your son, I spent like the next 7 years trying to find a video game that you could play.
I could play. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But but you have experienced some positive aspects of video game playing in your son.
Yes, I would absolutely say that, and he would say that. I mean, in his career path, he's a software engineer. He writes software for products, and when he takes breaks, he plays video games. Those are among the things he does. It's not the only thing that he does. But he and I have had this conversation. He feels like he's really gotten a lot of value from developing those capacities, and it's bringing money home in a check every month. I had a laboratory test at the hospital recently, and the guy that was operating the test for me was laughing. We were having a conversation, and he's like, my mother used to yell at me all the time about playing video games. He said, this is what I'm doing now. I'm playing a video game for a living. And the computer that he had was going off with different sounds and buzzes and activities, and he had to work his way through a checklist of programs. And we were laughing about that's the height of development, is that you find a way to make a living doing what you want to do, what you like to do.
Well, and so much of the evolution of technology has gone exactly that way, where it's incorporated into the very fabric of the job that people are doing. And while he wasn't actually playing a video game because he was doing a diagnostic test, what he's saying is that my experience playing video games has made me do this job better.
Exactly.
And that's something that we need as old geezers, right? As old white men, and we're dinosaurs. Our time is over. We need to understand.
Slow down there, Buck.
That there's a new reality on the horizon.
Town,
yeah. And that we don't have to be afraid of that. We don't have to say, well, in my day, I'm a crotchety old man. And
we will say that.
We will say that.
They'll just laugh at us and ignore us and go play video games.
Right, right. So
as well they should.
And I would not say that I can definitively point to positive things that I've gotten out of playing video games other than enjoyment. But I certainly recognize that there are the potential for real positives to be had. But just as with anything, the most important aspect of this is balance.
Well, and depending on the age of your child and the development of your child, you have some parenting responsibilities about exposure.
Right.
What are they getting involved in? And I would also say that there are categories of video games and that you should have some experience across the category fields, not just within one domain.
Yeah.
So what they call first-person shooter games, where you're the guy with the gun, you're a combat soldier in a military activity, and you're running across the battlefield and shooting up people and killing them. That's a first-person shooter game. Then there are strategy games, there are simulation games, Oregon Trail, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? Those are some older versions. There are newer ones. The graphics keep getting better. They now have virtual reality games that you can actually be in the game. Remember Tron, the movie that foreshadowed that this would all happen? It's all coming true.
Yeah. And I have never experienced a virtual reality game.
You need to give it a try.
Well, I can't. Because
yes,
I
okay.
can't see it.
I forgot.
So just for self-disclosure, I'm actually blind in my left eye, and so those things require binocular vision. And so I've never been able, because I would love to do that, and I would have a ton of equipment to be able to immerse myself in virtual reality.
You'd have a virtual reality
Yeah.
room in your home.
Yeah. But from what I understand, those games are getting to the point where the immersion factor is so complete that people can have problems getting out of the experience. Like it's so immersive.
How do you break out?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and so I think that is something. Yeah,
And also, our military spends gazillions of dollars
oh yeah,
every
the flight
year.
simulators for military aircraft.
Well, not only that, to fly drones. Some kid in St. Louis in an office building is driving a drone that's going around Islamabad looking for somebody to blow up. And he makes really good money doing it. And he has a career path that is wide open. So it's both good and bad, like everything else.
Right.
It's
Right.
how you use it.
Right. And so for me, what I want for people who may be on the edge, so, I play video games, but I'm certainly old enough to be outside the ideal range that video games are targeted for. And so some parents may be...
It's because you're old.
Yeah. They may have played video games. They may not really appreciate them, or
They may not know how they've evolved.
Yeah. The important thing is balance. Video games are good in moderation.
Benjamin Franklin said, moderation in all things except
Moderation. Yeah. And so if you're a parent and you're wondering how much time is too much, well, you should not play video games longer than you do your homework.
I don't know. You come up with those rules and the circumstances change.
Well, of course, but what I'm saying is everything in balance. So, you should be given as much attention to school as you're given to video games.
That's a good idealized goal.
Right.
But then you've got a child that's in the 3rd grade and a child that's in the 11th grade.
Yeah.
Different time frames.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
All right.
And yeah, so none of these rules are necessarily. But you also cannot ignore physical activity in lieu of playing video games. So a child is an organism that operates in multiple domains.
Well, but there are games that feed into that as well. Like, you remember when the Wii
When Wii
games
came
were
out and they said everybody's
people
going
were
to be
bowling or playing tennis or hitting baseballs with their little weed thingies.
And you can burn
you
a
get
lot of calories
exercise,
doing
dancing,
that.
yeah.
But then those kinds of, the new versions of PlayStation and Xbox, which are releasing for this Christmas season in 2020, don't have any of that. So Xbox and PlayStation tried to go with Nintendo, and even the new Nintendo doesn't have that as a part of its. So those things were things that people.
But by the same token, like I saw an advertisement yesterday because of the pandemic for something called Mirror.
Yeah. I've seen that.
Is an internet connected exercise process where you have a trainer that gives you encouragement, like, hey, Joe, raise your right elbow a little bit, and do 10 more of these. You can get them. Come on now.
Right.
And people are buying those things and exercising at home.
It's an actual reflective surface, so you can see yourself superimposed on the trainer.
Yeah.
And so the trainer can do
it right.
and then you can mimic it, But then
I didn't know that. I just saw the ad, and I thought, well, we've come a long way, baby. Yeah.
But the device is smart enough. It has enough sensors in it where it can sense when you are doing it incorrectly, and then the trainer can correct you.
So it's very much like the Nintendo Wii originally planned to be.
Right.
So, yeah.
But obviously, this is an incredibly expensive piece of hardware, and so most people wouldn't buy something like that just to play video games.
Right.
But to the extent
most people buy exercise equipment and then never use it too.
Exactly.
So
but
you'll still have a mirror.
Hang their laundry on.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and hopefully you would use it, but who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put your makeup on.
Exercise equipment, and this is a whole different conversation, but I am old school, so I have a gym in my home. I have several hundred pounds of Olympic weight. And then I see these kinds of, the bikes you can ride on, and like you're going through France, and this
a little video
screen
screen on the top of the handlebars.
And I am just like, you little, you don't need that.
Old. The world and the technology's moved beyond it.
And I'm crotchety, and you don't need that to get in shape. Well, back in my day. Yeah, we would walk to the gym, and it was uphill both ways.
You may need to get therapy for that.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully that is informative for people. And as always, if you want to get a hold of us, you can reach us at psychwithmike.com. The music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue. You can find us on TikTok at Psych with Mike. You can find us on Facebook at Psych with Mike. You can go to Apple Podcasts and leave us a comment and a rating, which we would always very much appreciate. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.